Toys started out as just miniature versions of adult things to teach kids about being a grown-up, a toy rifle or a dollhouse. But they've evolved to simply stir our imagination or just make us laugh. Toys are fun, but the backstory reveals grown-ups have a hidden agenda. Toys are rooted in reality. They mirror what's going on around us in the grown-up world.
Toys reflect the culture at any given time.
Toy trains, toy cars. Dollhouses are intended to teach girls how to be a homemaker.
You would have things that would prepare kids to work. You'd choose small versions of adult things.
From tin soldiers to G.I. Joe, rag dolls to Barbie dolls. Toys evolve with technology. But what do we lose when the evolution leads to ones and zeros of video games?
Kids are spending more time on screens than ever.
The boundaries of age and gender are breaking down to get the whole family in on the fun.
We are a tool in a parent's toolbox to get the kids outside and playing.
Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head with their own cars and trailers. That's what's new.
The first toy commercial is Mr. Potato Head, 1952. A pretty antiquated toy. After all, it's just sticking faces on an actual potato. But it does require creativity and imagination. A successful strategy for a toy to break through the crowded market.
The success of a toy depends on connecting to something within the culture.
Chris Burns says of 500 toys at a toy show, maybe 5 will end up being profitable. He's a consultant and historian known as the Toy Guy.
The goals of play is to socialize kids to enter a culture as we find it right now. So if you go back to the original Erector set, right, the rule set said, hey boys, because it was unthinkable that a girl would actually want to build something, and all the toys for girls at that time were about homemaking and parenting. Fast forward to today, you've got Barbie, who's completely diverse, had hundreds of careers, and it really does reflect the time because kids want things that reflect themselves and their relationship to the world.
Antonio Passon invents his classic toy somewhat by accident. He makes phonograph cabinets and builds a wagon to carry his tools.
Pretty soon he was selling more wagons than anything else, so like any entrepreneur, he just went with what was working.
He calls it the Liberty Coaster. Robert Passon is Antonio's grandson.
And he would assemble this wagon in front of the hardware store owner, showing the quality, showing how easy it was to assemble, and that was what sold them. He also had this amazing personality. He was a very gregarious guy. He had a huge smile.
This Italian immigrant develops the first mass-produced wagon. You know it as the Radio Flyer.
And he chose those words because radio was the coolest invention at the time. It was also the time of airplanes and flight, so they were just two really cool buzzwords that he put on the wagon. My dad and his team thought we need to come
Robert is now the chief wagon officer of Radio Flyer, still based in Chicago. He shows us the evolution of the wagon.
This is an original Liberty Coaster wagon that my grandpa built. And
the World's Fair is a turning point, a chance to show his little red wagon off to the world.
So he borrowed a bunch of money. He built this giant 50-foot tall exhibit of an Art Deco styled boy riding a Radio Flyer wagon. And underneath the giant wagon, he had a little workshop where they made these miniature wagons. They showed how they were made in this miniature production line and sold those for 25 cents. And it was really the birth of the brand.
Antonio achieved success with nothing more than a third-grade education. His grandson has an MBA from Northwestern. Is there something that you feel like you brought to the table?
When I talked to consumers, the things they would say to me were, oh my gosh, when I had my little red wagon, I imagined it was a race car. I imagined it was a spaceship. So we realized, we don't make wagons. We bring smiles and create warm memories.
People recall their little red Radio Flyer tricycle, only it never existed. But it inspires Robert to expand the product line. They now do make a tricycle. And remember the inchworm?
Inchworm, I love you.
The original manufacturer doesn't maintain the copyright, so Radio Flyer now makes that too. And go-karts.
One of my most vivid memories was the first time I came here when I was 5 years old. My dad brought me to work with him. I just remember walking into the building, hearing the sounds of the machinery, smelling the paint, seeing on the conveyor line all these little red wagons. And I just thought it was so cool.
Kites.
What's up, Doc?
Dolls.
Ray is the champion demonstrator for the Duncan Yo-Yo Company of Chicago.
And yo-yos go back centuries. The Industrial Revolution gives toy making a lift in the early 19th century. In 1850, there are 47 toy makers in the U.S. By 1900, there are 500. The toy industry really takes off after World War II. America doesn't need so many kids working the farm.
Suddenly, we had young people with leisure time. Manufacturers, entertainers realized, hey, this is a profitable cohort, and the American teenager was born, and that subsequently filtered down. And we also saw the rise of television in the 50s and 60s. So that unified the culture in a way and created this whole boom in youth.
Most dolls in the 1950s are baby dolls, and Ruth Handler's daughter wants a doll more like her future self. Ruth names the doll after her daughter, Barbie. The craze begins in 1959.
In France, too, all the pretty girls have fallen for the hoopla. The swaying rhythmic motion is not only good exercise, it's relaxing.
The 50s also give us the hula hoop fad and the frisbee. Inventor Fred Morrison sees college kids in New England tossing empty pie tins from the Frisbee Baking Company. Burns says in the 1950s, kids play with toys until about 11. Now, that's down to age 6 or 7. Why is that happening?
I think because there's so many other things for them to do. There's the advent of screens, there's sports, there's the trend among young women for Sephora and makeup that's starting earlier and earlier every year.
And here is G.I. Joe with Kung Fu Grip. G.I. Joe has hands that grip.
In 1964, Hasbro introduces G.I. Joe, coining the term action figure.
Barbie is killing it with girls, or starting to kill it with girls. We need something for boys, but we can't call it a doll. We'll call it an action figure because that's a testosterone-infused name.
And it worked?
And it worked. And still works.
The Star Wars TIE Fighter and X-Wing fighter. Now your children can relive our great space battles.
In the 1970s, Star Wars toys are so popular, Kenner can't make them all in time for Christmas. So Kenner issues coupons for when the toy is finally available. The 1980s delivered Transformers.
It's insane. They wait 4 hours outside a department store and they crash in like cattle.
And the Cabbage Patch craze.
Nobody expects a fad to take off like that. So suddenly people are slugging it out in the aisles of Kmart. They're flying to England to get them. It became a cultural marker. So having one of those was really sort of a sign of status at the time, kind of like a high-end car or a Birkin bag or anything that we ascribe value to in our culture.
And despite the fads, these toys are timeless. Lincoln Logs, Hot Wheels, and Play-Doh. Play-Doh is first manufactured as wallpaper cleaner in the 1930s before it becomes a hit toy decades later.
Again? You hit me again!
These days, there are more products targeting families, so we can all spend more leisure time together. It's a trend in the toy world, grown-ups getting in on the fun, sometimes buying toys for themselves.
I think the hot discussion is the kidults. There were more kidult toys sold last year than preschool toys. They're collecting things that are a touchstone to their childhood that they then want to share with their children. Lego has done all this stuff for the high-end collector. You're not buying your 8-year-old a $500 Death Star, right? You're buying that for you.
When I was a kid, it was definitely Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters.
Nick Mayer collects so many toys from his childhood, he opens a store, Bric-a-Brac Records. What appealed to you about Ninja Turtles? Do you remember?
You know, I'm not sure. I think the Ninja Turtles line was One of the early ones that really embraced a lot of wild colors, as you can see in this spread here. The characters were just kind of all over the place.
These toys from the late 20th century are winners. Most toy inventions never get made, and many land in the discount sales bin. Research is minimal. There's not enough time. The customer is growing and changing quickly. Toy makers sometimes have to just go with their gut.
In the 60s, 70s, there was kid world, no adults allowed. There was grown-up world, no kids allowed. And then there was family world where the two came together. Those distinctions have completely blurred.
That's why the toy box is getting bigger. Video games are not going away, but there will always be room for a toy you can hold in your hand, a toy that inspires, and a toy that brings families together.